Picture this. It is the late summer of 1999, and you are in Queens, New York.
Oh, right.
Yeah, the weather is hot, it is heavy, and well, something is very, very wrong. You have this really unusual cluster of encephalitis putting elderly patients in the local hospitals.
Right, which is severe inflammation of the brain.
Exactly. And tragically, several of these patients are actually dying. But at the exact same time, in this unsettling parallel, crows are mysteriously dropping dead from the sky all across the city.
It really felt like something out of a medieval plague narrative, you know?
Oh, totally.
You have these severe human casualties in the intensive care wards, and then these grim, feathery omens falling from the trees right outside the hospital windows.
It is so incredibly eerie. So in this deep dive, we are taking you through the incredible story of how a forgotten old world virus actually arrived in the United States.
Yeah, it's a wild story.
We are going to explore how it flipped our entire understanding of public health upside down and forced the creation of a massive modern surveillance system.
And yet, more than a quarter century later, it never resulted in a human vaccine.
Which is just crazy to think about. To map all this out, we are pulling from a really robust stack of sources today.
Yes, we have documented histories of that initial 1999 outbreak, plus peer-reviewed articles from the New England Journal of Medicine.
We've also got historical data from the CDC and the World Health Organization and accounts from the actual scientists who are on the ground trying to solve this thing.
So a lot of ground to cover.
It is. And the craziest part of those early days is how the medical establishment initially reacted.
Right, the first diagnosis.
Yeah, the New York City and state health departments working alongside the CDC, they look at these human cases in Queens, they analyze the symptoms, and they issue a diagnosis: St. Louis encephalitis.
Which, I mean, is a known American mosquito-borne virus.
Right. And, okay, let's unpack this, because to you or me, making the wrong call on a deadly virus sounds like a massive blunder.
It does sound bad on paper.
But it is really like a detective trying to identify a suspect from a blurry security photo using only the local database of known offenders.
That's a great way to put it.
If the suspect is an international criminal who has never set foot in the country before, they just aren't going to be in the local system.
Exactly. It was a defensible, reasonable first guess by the authorities. They saw the clinical presentation and simply matched it to the most likely known pathogen already established in North America.
Right. But as we know now, it was dead wrong.
Completely wrong. And the crucial turning point is how we actually found out they were wrong.
Oh, this is my favorite part.
Because the clue that broke this entire medical mystery did not come from a human hospital.
No, it came from an entirely different species, miles away from those wards in Queens.
Which brings us to the absolute hero of this story, Dr. Tracy McNamara.
Yes. She was the chief pathologist at the Bronx Zoo.
Right.
She is going to work, and she is noticing all these wild crows dying across the city. But then the zoo's own captive exotic birds start dying.
And we aren't just talking about local pigeons here.
No, we are talking about a bald eagle, Chilean flamingos, a cormorant. And when she examines their bodies, she finds they are suffering from severe catastrophic brain and heart hemorrhages.
And that specific pathology, that's the discrepancy that cracked the case.
Wow.
Yeah, Dr. McNamara knew something the human doctors hadn't factored in. St. Louis encephalitis does not kill birds like this.
Oh, really?
Right. Birds are supposed to carry St. Louis encephalitis without experiencing massive mortality.
Huh.
So the sheer scale and violence of these avian deaths meant the official human diagnosis had to be incorrect.
So if the same biological agent was killing the flamingos and the folks in Queens, it was definitely not St. Louis encephalitis.
Exactly. So she pushes for her bird tissues to be tested.
But the human labs are, understandably, kind of laser focused on human samples, right? They want to validate their St. Louis encephalitis theory.
Yeah, they were a bit tunnel visioned.
So McNamara sends her samples to a federal animal lab. Instead, the USDA National Veterinary Services Laboratories out in Ames, Iowa.
And within about 4 weeks of a human outbreak being recognized, this animal lab identifies a flavivirus.
And just to give that some context, a flavivirus is like a specific family of viruses that are typically transmitted by ticks or mosquitoes.
Right. They contain a single strand of RNA, and this family includes things like yellow fever and dengue.
But the specific flavivirus the lab in Iowa found did not match the genetic signature of St. Louis encephalitis at all.
No, it was West Nile virus.
Which is a pathogen native to Africa, the Middle East, and parts of Asia. It had never, ever been seen in the Western Hemisphere.
Never. This was its debut.
But wait, why did it take a zoo pathologist to figure this out? I mean, aren't human doctors and animal experts supposed to be looking at the same warning signs?
You would think so.
Especially for a disease that is carried by insects and affects both of us?
Well, what's fascinating here is that before 1999, they really weren't looking at the same signs. Yeah. This incident cemented a concept in public health known as One Health.
One Health.
Right. Before West Nile arrived, human medicine, veterinary medicine, and environmental health were treated as completely siloed disciplines. Doctors looked at human patients, vets looked at animals.
So there was no crosstalk at all.
Very little. West Nile proved that human, animal, and environmental health are actually a single, interconnected surveillance problem.
It's kind of like having a top-of-the-line home security system on your front door, but the motion sensors out in the yard are completely turned off.
Oh, that is a perfect way to visualize it.
The dying crows were tripping the yard sensors all over the city, but the human doctors were only looking at the front door.
Exactly. The human-focused health sector simply had not been structured to read environmental signals.
Wow.
But once Dr. McNamara forced them to look at the yard sensors, the terrifying reality set in. A brand new virus was loose in the country, and they had to figure out exactly how it behaved.
And once you know who the suspect is, you need to know their MO. And the mechanics of West Nile virus are honestly terrifying because of the lopsided arithmetic of how it affects people.
It really is lopsided.
According to the WHO and CDC data, roughly 80% of infected people have absolutely zero symptoms. None. They never even know they had it.
Which makes tracking it nearly impossible. And then about 20% develop what is called West Nile fever.
Okay.
This brings on the aches, the fatigue, sometimes a rash. It is definitely unpleasant, but you recover.
But then there is the final brutal statistic. Fewer than 1% of the people who get infected develop neuroinvasive disease.
And that's the dangerous part.
We are talking about meningitis, encephalitis, or an acute flaccid paralysis that looks a lot like polio. It kills or it permanently disables.
And the data shows it specifically targets the elderly and the immunocompromised.
Which explains exactly why those older patients in Queens were the first visible victims.
Yes. The mechanism behind that 1% is deeply tied to the blood-brain barrier.
Right. That barrier is a highly selective border of cells designed to keep pathogens in the bloodstream from entering the central nervous system.
Precisely. In a young, healthy person, the immune system usually fights off the virus before it reaches high concentrations.
Okay, so it handles it.
Right. But as we age, or if our immune systems are suppressed, the virus can replicate unchecked in the blood.
It essentially builds up enough viral troops to storm the gates of the blood-brain barrier.
Exactly. It breaches that barrier, enters the brain or the lining of the spinal cord, and causes massive destructive inflammation.
That sounds awful.
It is. And understanding the transmission chain that delivers the virus into our bloodstream is what makes that arithmetic so dangerous.
Because the virus is carried by the common Culex mosquito.
Right. Now, in the wild, birds are what we call the amplifying reservoir.
So an amplifying reservoir, does that mean the birds are basically acting like a biological virus factory, like pumping out enough of the pathogen for the next mosquito to pick up?
That is exactly the mechanism. A mosquito bites an infected bird, picks up the virus, and then that mosquito bites another bird.
Okay.
The virus replicates to massive levels in the bird's bloodstream. It is primed and ready to infect the next mosquito that comes along.
Wow.
But humans and horses, interestingly, are what we call dead-end hosts.
Meaning what, exactly?
Meaning we get bitten and we can get incredibly sick, but the virus does not replicate in our blood to high enough levels for a mosquito to bite us and pass it on to someone else.
Oh, I see. But even as a dead-end host, the spread across the continent was relentless.
Unstoppable, really.
The virus is hitching rides on mosquitoes, and more importantly, it is flying inside migrating birds. It hit Canada by 2002.
Right.
It reached the West Coast by 2004. There was a massive resurgence centered in Texas in 2012.
Yeah, that was a huge year.
And by that year, all 48 contiguous U.S. states had reported locally acquired human cases. It basically blanketed the country.
It became permanently endemic. It is now the leading domestically acquired mosquito-borne disease in the continental U.S.
So what does this all mean?
Well,
I mean, if you were trying to contain it, it is practically impossible. It is kind of like an invading army where 80% of the soldiers are completely invisible.
yeah, that's a perfect analogy.
You cannot stop them at the borders because you don't even know they are there. You only see the devastation when that rare 1% strikes a vulnerable target.
And that invisibility triggered sheer panic among state health departments between 2000 and 2002.
I can imagine.
They were watching this unseen threat cross state lines faster than anyone modeled. There was no cure.
Nothing.
There was no specific medical treatment you could give someone at the bedside once they developed encephalitis.
So what did they do?
Well, the federal government realized they couldn't fight the disease in the hospital. They had to build an information shield around the entire country instead.
This is where the infrastructure comes in. This panic basically forced the federal blueprint that we still rely on today.
Yeah, this outbreak birthed the modern federal public health role as we know it today. Instead of searching for a magic pill, they built a system.
Right. In the year 2000, the CDC launched ArboNET.
Which was a national electronic surveillance network.
And we have to remember, in the year 2000, doing this was a massive logistical headache.
Oh, absolutely.
We aren't talking about modern cloud computing here. They had to create standardized reporting protocols across 50 different state health departments, local mosquito control boards, and veterinary clinics.
It was a monumental achievement in data sharing. ArboNET pulled together data on human cases, dead bird sightings, infected mosquito pools, and sentinel animals, all into a single, unified dashboard.
They finally connected the silos.
Exactly. The human doctors, the veterinarians, and the entomologists were finally looking at the same map.
But the system was almost immediately put to the ultimate test. Because in 2002, a horrifying new transmission route was discovered.
Yeah, this was the blood supply crisis.
They realized that West Nile could be passed through blood transfusions and organ transplants.
Which completely upends the safety of the entire medical system.
Oh, wait, if 80% of people who get infected have absolutely zero symptoms,
Then they don't stay home sick.
they feel perfectly fine, and they might just go down to their local blood drive and donate a pint of blood.
And that donated blood goes directly into a hospital patient who is very likely already immunocompromised.
The exact demographic most vulnerable to the neuroinvasive form of the disease.
Is an absolute nightmare scenario.
But the response was staggering. The sources show that by June 14, 2003, every single unit of donated blood in the United States was being screened for West Nile via nucleic acid testing. Every single unit.
To appreciate the logistical triumph of that, we really have to look at the testing itself.
Right.
Standard tests often look for antibodies, which are the immune system's response to a virus. But antibodies can take weeks to form.
So there's a lag time.
Exactly. If you donate blood the day after a mosquito bites you, an antibody test will show absolutely nothing. But nucleic acid testing doesn't look for antibodies. It looks for the actual genetic fingerprint, the viral RNA of West Nile itself.
So it is incredibly fast and incredibly accurate.
Yes. Within barely a year of recognizing the transfusion threat, the FDA and the blood centers implemented this universal, highly advanced genetic screening standard across the entire national blood supply.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Isn't it absolutely incredible that we managed to safeguard the entire national blood supply in barely a year, yet we couldn't just invent a shot to stop people from getting sick in the first place?
It is quite the paradox.
I mean, we mobilized a nationwide genetic testing dragnet, but we couldn't make a vaccine.
Well, we connect this to the bigger picture. This apparent contradiction reveals the true nature of modern public health in America.
Okay, how so?
The actual indirect power of our health agencies lies exactly here. They excel at establishing surveillance, enforcing rigorous safety standards, and ensuring shared systems, like the blood supply, are secure.
So they build the net.
Right. Their strength is in building massive infrastructure, rather than delivering those dramatic, single-shot medical conquests.
Which brings us to the really uncomfortable coda of this whole story.
The missing piece.
Yeah. We successfully built a world-class surveillance system to track the virus. We completely locked down the blood supply. But that begs the ultimate, lingering question.
Why no cure?
It has been more than 25 years since West Nile landed in Queens. Why is there still no cure? Why is there no vaccine for humans?
Especially when you consider that today, West Nile is a permanent endemic threat. It rises and falls with the weather every single year. Cases and deaths are still reported annually.
Yet there is no licensed human vaccine, and the kicker is there are highly effective vaccines for horses.
SR.
They have been developed and on the market for years. Is the human immune system really that much more complicated than a horse's? I mean, why can't we make this biology work for people?
The science is actually not the obstacle here. The sources make this very clear. Candidate human vaccines have been successfully formulated. They have been made, and they have successfully passed early phase 1 and phase 2 trials, proving they generate a solid immune response.
So it's not a scientific failure. We literally know how to do it.
We do. This raises an important question about our national priorities and the reality of medical economics.
Economics?
Right. The hurdles preventing a human vaccine are entirely institutional and financial. West Nile is seasonal, and its outbreaks are geographically highly unpredictable.
So it's hard to track for trials.
Exactly. One year you might have a massive spike in Texas. The next year, very few cases nationwide.
And to run a massive phase 3 clinical trial, you need to test thousands of people during an active outbreak to prove the vaccine actually prevents the disease in the real world.
Exactly. You might spend millions setting up a trial in Texas, only for the outbreak to happen in Colorado that year. It is a logistical nightmare.
Wow.
For horses, the economics are simple. Owners view the vaccine as a routine, necessary insurance policy for a highly valuable animal. They buy it every year.
But for humans, the perception of risk is lower because of that 80% asymptomatic rate we talked about.
Meaning, if you're a pharmaceutical company, there is no guaranteed, steady market to justify the hundreds of millions of dollars required to finish those late-stage trials.
Without a guaranteed return on investment, the pharmaceutical companies simply will not cross the finish line.
Nope. And this is the great paradox. The government has never sustained a financial push to carry a human vaccine through those final stages either.
That is the ultimate B-side to this whole story. American public health is perfectly designed and publicly funded to watch diseases.
To monitor them.
Right, we will spend millions to monitor the threat on a dashboard, but we rely almost exclusively on private capital to cure them.
It is a profound institutional reality. We have the capability to monitor the threat with incredible precision, but we lack the institutional will to eliminate it when the profit margins aren't clear.
To summarize this incredible journey for you, this entire paradigm shift started with a zoo veterinarian looking at dead cows in the Bronx.
Dr. McNamara.
Yes. Because Dr. McNamara refused to ignore the animals, she fundamentally reshaped the American public health apparatus. She forced us to realize the one health lesson. Human and animal health are the exact same thing.
And in response, we built a world-class tracking system with ArboNET, and we fully protected the national blood supply with unprecedented speed.
But the central, somewhat rueful reality of this whole deep dive is this. We live in a country that will rapidly, brilliantly mobilize to watch a virus on a map.
Yes.
We will mobilize to screen every drop of our donated blood using advanced genetics, but we will simultaneously accept a disease becoming permanently endemic, causing severe neurological damage and death every single year, simply because the economics of a cure do not add up.
Right.
We built the guard at the gates, but we actively chose not to finish the weapon.
The missing human vaccine is its own kind of answer about what the country chooses to finish.
It really makes you look at the world a little differently, and I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you go about your week. We know that our climate is continuing to warm. That means that the habitats of mosquitoes are expanding further and further north, and the migration paths of wild birds are shifting and changing every year.
Right.
Knowing how West Nile arrived and how it hid in plain sight until Dr. McNamara looked at those dying crows, what other unknown old-world viruses are already quietly moving through our local wildlife right now, just waiting for the right bird to drop from the sky before we even know we need to be watching?